I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. You may know me better as the Kurt Schlichter, who is a senior columnist at townhall.com. The Kurt Schlichter, who is a former trial lawyer here in Los Angeles. The Kurt Schlichter, who was an infantry colonel with the Army, serving 27 years, visiting such wonderful places as Operation Desert Storm, the LA riots, Kosovo. I visited Ukraine. I even walked into North Korea a couple feet. I'll tell you that story sometime. And I'm an author. Yes, I'm an author of the new book, the Kelly Turnbull book, number 9, Panama Red. Go get Panama Red. The Frank Luntz rule, as articulated by Hugh Hewitt, says that you must mention the title of your book, Panama Red, 7 times for people to understand, for people to allow it inside their brain, for people to go to Amazon and get Panama Red. So go get Panama Red so I can stop saying Panama Red. Wow. You know, Hugh is off doing Hugh things, and he said, Kurt, can you take the days between Christmas and New Year's and guest host for me on the Hugh Hewitt show? I guess he wants somebody to make him seem sane and reasonable and pleasant by comparison. But I took this opportunity. I said, absolutely, I will do it. And then I realized it was a trap. Hugh Hewitt is cunning. He has trapped me in what should be a desert, a news desert, a vast wasteland where absolutely nothing is happening and there's nothing to talk about. And I have to spend my monologues going, trying to figure out something to talk about. But Hugh and his cunning, evil conspiracy have been foiled. Thanks to a guy named Nick Shirley. Who's Nick Shirley? Well, if you're one of the 110 million people who've watched his YouTube reports on corruption among the Somali community in Mogadishu, Minnesota, I mean Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Panama Red, it is Mogadishu, Minnesota. Just want to bring that up. Thanks to Nick Shirley and doing what Andrew Breitbart said to do, we now have a full and complete graphic picture of the mass corruption that's going on in that state under Tim Walz, who, you may recall, Kamala Harris decided was a better candidate for vice president than Josh Shapiro, which says all you need to say on every level about Kamala Harris. So Governor Jazz Hands has presided over the mass looting of the American Treasury. Now, there's a lot of talk out there about how Nick went out and did this reporting. He did what Andrew Breitbart, who got me into this whole conservative milieu, told us to do, which is you are your own journalists, okay? You are your own artists, your own writers. Panama Red. They're inspired by Andrew Breitbart. He said, go out there. You've got the technology now. You've got your little camera. You can go out and report what the news won't, because the regime media doesn't want to report this stuff. Now, I want to be fair, because there have been some reports about it. And the New York Times a few weeks ago did report about it. Here in the Hugh Hewitt Show, we are objective. It is a fact that the New York Times reported about it once, and the context was, which is understandable because it's a liberal paper, was, mass corruption by new aliens who've been brought to America out of the goodness of our heart by people who clearly didn't see Black Hawk Down. It's not going to help the welfare state expand if the welfare state is being treated like Ned Beatty in Deliverance. So props to the New York Times, right? The New York Times, good job. No one else has reported it. Fox is, of course, reporting it, but Fox isn't regime media. 110 million views on YouTube. This is the story, people. This is why there's no news desert. This is why we've got a lot to talk about. But our people have been talking about it, mostly to cover it up. Of course, to the extent that it is being addressed, it's being addressed as a terrible problem that must be suppressed, and you're racist for noticing. Let's go with cut number 2, Jamal Osman.
And yes, folks have done horrible things, and people have committed crimes, but we should not be pointing the entire community in one brush.
I heard that MDE took this step to really stop feeding the kids in the middle of pandemic. My office had to do something.
In the video, Osmond tells the room how he arranged a call with the MDE commissioner about their attempts to stop new meal sites.
But I'm one of those people that push back and call it what it is, which is racist tactics. I told her this money is actually from the federal. Your job is to distribute fairly to the communities that deserve.
At the time he delivered this speech, Osmond's wife, Ilo Amba, was in the middle of claiming to run a meal site of her own in this small office in downtown Minneapolis that the Minnesota Attorney General in this civil complaint calls a fraudulent shell company. Public records show Amba's nonprofit Urban Advantage Services received $460,000 in reimbursements between February and November 2021. The AG shut it down, citing participation in the meal fraud scheme. What's more, testimony and evidence in Bach's ongoing trial has shown Osmond and Amba signed over control of a different, dormant nonprofit they founded together called Stigma Free. Osmond writing to its new board, quote, "I have seen growth during the time that I have served, and I'm confident you will continue to grow this amazing organization in my absence." The men who took over Stigma Free are charged with using it immediately to rack up more than $13 million in meal fraud across the state.
Councilmember Osmond, you agreed to sit down with me and talk about this week.
Osmond never returned follow-up calls or texts.
Is Councilmember Jamal Osmond in the office today?
And could not be found to answer questions at City Council or at his home.
Well, congratulations for CNN for actually going out there and following Nick Shirley's example. Jamal Osmond, of course, is a Minneapolis City Council member and clearly part of the looter caucus. But you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to point out that there's mass crime. And you're not supposed to point out that it's primarily among the Somali community because that's racist. Wait a minute. Hold on. I keep hearing that diversity means every group brings special advantages to America. I'm willing to buy that. I married into a different ethnic group, and they had wonderful advantages. I ate dinner with I had paella the other day. It was really good. Not seafood. I don't eat seafood. And I actually showed up, unlike the children in these frauds. But it is also fair when you're talking about diversity to bring up the negatives. And the culture of Somalia is a net negative. Okay? It is a third world culture that is not like the Nordic, very stable, kind of good government, goo-gooey kind of government that the Scandinavian natives who immigrated to the United States brought in. It is something completely different and is absolutely taking advantage of them. But the white wine women, high on SSRIs and bad Chardonnay, they've got another thought. Cut one.
To diversity.
I don't want to be replaced at a job because I'm
white.
You
are not being replaced.
I literally just said I've not gotten jobs.
So have I, but I don't feel like I'm being replaced.
That's what that is. You could have got that job if you were black. So how is that not being replaced? That's what affirmative action is. What do you think it is?
No, that was casting. That's what that was. It was casting. But why
stop. I can't take it. White women with Chardonnay and SSRIs who are liberal are a curse upon America. I wonder if Jamal Osmond thinks that's racist too. Don't know. Don't care. Our next guest is Jim Hansen, president of World Strat, Middle East Forum chief strategist. Follow him at Jim Hansen, DC. And as you might guess from Staff Sergeant Barry Sandler's famous tune, he used to be a Green Beret. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
I am well. How about yourself, Kurt?
I love the power of technology that lets you transmit on video from the back of your luxurious camper, which has been parked in my front yard before.
It's a blessing. I have the cats. They are part of the scenery. Yeah.
Guys, they are incredible cats. And why we are talking about immigrants today, in part, these cats are safe from being eaten because, take my word for it, you do not want to you do not want to make a play to make lunch out of one of Jim's cats.
Samantha would be the one who might take the person who tried that out.
And of course, Samantha is the young paratrooper, has more jumps than I do. But then again, doesn't everybody? But anyway, Jim, I just wanted to ask, when are you and I going to start our daycare center?
I was telling Dwayne in the break, I've got my random name generator doing spreadsheet of kids' names, and and at this point you could use just Scrabble words because I don't think they have it even be English. Just random collections of 5 and 8 word, collections of nothing.
Well, look, you and I both served in the federal government in a military capacity. How surprised are you that the federal government has screwed up so massively?
I am absolutely unstunned. And I think the horrifying thing is, people were talking about, is Doge making this stuff up? They're saying, oh, we found billions. Everywhere they looked, they found billions of dollars missing. And Doge was barely covering the ashtray change of the great corruption that's been going on. But think about this, the budget will probably balance itself if we ever catch all these scumbags.
Well, that would be nice. Now, I specifically said the federal government was screwing up. I did not say that the state of Michigan has screwed up, because I don't think they screwed up. I think this is a feature, not a bug in their eyes.
Oh, and remember, Minnesota too, Tim Waltz, that guy, stolen valor poser, he's done everything, and though he may have given away classified information on a nuclear capable howitzer to the Chi-Coms on his money visits there. I think you're absolutely right that there was a plan to take government money, funnel it through NGOs, and send it right back to Democrat causes and candidates. And that, again, may be a blessing. As we stop that, we may be able to have fair elections.
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath about the potential for fair elections. I just don't think that's in the cards anytime soon. But you've got to wonder, if they can't manage things like, not losing $9 billion, how are they guaranteeing the elections are fair? And do they actually want to have fair elections? My guess is they don't.
No, I think the fun part of this, Act Blue was the big Democrat machine for taking money in and funneling it to candidates. And now they found out that those guys weren't even checking credit cards to make sure they were valid. So we know they were funneling foreign money. We know they were illegally giving more money to multiple candidates than they were allowed to by making up straw donors. And then they were using the entire federal government and all of our tax money as the big funnel at the top to push that into. So I love unraveling this. I think it's perfect. I think it's a great way for us to move into the new golden age, is let's stop the old corrupt Democrat money machine age.
Well, look, you and I in the military are both taught to seek out the enemy's weak point. And I think we may have stumbled on it, which is the massive funding through direct corruption and just excess spending of the entire left through the federal government. I mean, this is a giant payoff to the Democrat Party. They are locking down the Somali community vote, which will be like 99% Democrat, and they have no. And since most of it's federal money, what the hell do the people, the Democrats in Minnesota, care? They don't.
No, and the thing is, there's two things about that are outrageous. Number one, Somalia has been either the number 1 or number 2 most corrupt country since anybody's been keeping track of this stuff. So importing large groups, and then don't spread them out. No, put 80,000 of them in one small place so they can form their own corruptocrat state right there, and then have weak Democrats who are both scared of them and also enabling them to allow that to get worse. And then allow that to be the model they've used in every other place where Democrats have control, is they look at the government as a piggy bank for their stuff. And we are now on the cusp of shutting a bunch of that down and we just absolutely have to throw some people in prison over this. And let's just hope, I have faith. I think we're going to see that.
Well, I hope so, too. I understand the feds are wandering around the Somali community. And you got to understand, when you say that Somalia is the most corrupt country in the world, this is a globe that includes Nigeria and Ukraine.
Right. I mean, it's impressive. The only people that got passed by South Sudan recently, so they were only number 2 after like a 10-year run at number 1. I know. But you got to look at that. And now as we look at if we are going to allow any immigrants in at all, I think it's fair to say the bottom 10 to 20 most corrupt countries on earth don't qualify for any visas, refugee status, none of it. Nobody from those countries comes in because their entire culture is built around corruption, theft, stealing, and tribal beefs. We don't need to import that. That's just stupid.
Well, look, I think before people vote on immigration numbers for any set groups, they'd be forced to watch Black Hawk Down.
There was this Somali guy who was making a TikTok, and he's like, oh, you beef with one Somali, you beef with all the Somalis. I'm like, dude, did you do the math on the Battle of Mogadishu, which was Black Hawk Down? Because we lost 18 KIAs, and we stopped counting at 1,000 Somali dead. So if you want to play that game in Minneapolis, the Battle of Minneapolis will not go your way. There's a lot of hunters there who will make your life miserable.
Well, what people don't remember about Black Hawk Down is why they brought Michael Durant back to the Americans so quickly, because the Americans said, we're coming to get him, and we're coming air, sea, and land. Right. And not a lot of air power for the Somali people. The fact is, this is great for conservatives because it fully discredits the welfare state and it fully discredits the immigration paradigm. How do you think this is going to play out over the next 6 months? Next 12 months in 2026. We got about 30 seconds.
Look, dude, the inflation numbers and the GDP numbers say Trump was right about the economy. Tariffs didn't kill us. He's bringing business home. The people going back to work, government workers are going home, and employable U.S. citizens, not immigrants, are getting jobs. That's going to play out, and that's going to remind people to stop bringing in the rest of the third world, employ our own people, and manufacture in the U.S. It's a winning cause.
From your mouth to God's ear. Well, we got some great bumper music to talk about what's going on in Minnesota. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. We got a lot of thieves up there. But look, don't get cynical. Don't get to the point where you don't care about other people, where you think that everything is a lie and a scam. It's not. Angel Tree. Okay, first of all, Army Colonel, I stepped up and I took one of my paychecks for this gig, because I'm doing it 4 times. I gave it to Angel Tree because I don't want to tell you to do something that I'm not willing to do. What I want to do is say thanks to everyone who joined our Hugh Hewitt Show Angel Tree Christmas campaign through our friends at the nonprofit Prison Fellowship. Together, just on this show, we blessed over 4,000 boys and girls who had a mom or dad in prison with a very special Christmas morning. If you missed our show last Friday, the day after Christmas, we received this call from a woman named Kathy who knows very well the impact of folks like you from all over the country.
I myself was in prison for 4 years, and Angel Tree never failed. My kids got a gift from me every year, and I'm so thankful for that. Everybody that's donating, you're donating to a great cause. You really are, because these kids go through so much, which is nothing is their fault, but kids will think funny things sometimes. Oh, mom's in prison because we did something bad. It's a great organization, and I'm happy to put whatever extra money I might have into it.
And here's the really great news. Prison Fellowship's work doesn't stop at Christmas. It goes on year-round with things like Angel Tree Sports Camp and Angel Tree Summer Camps for kids. If you'd still like to help and score a year-end tax deduction, our website, HughHewitt.com, has an Angel Tree banner right at the top. All you got to do is go hit it. Your generous gift in any amount is going to carry on this great work. But remember, to get a 2025 tax deduction, you must make your donation before midnight on December 31st. Angel Tree, make it happen, people. I did. You've got no excuse. Okay, there's some things that you've got to do, and that's help others. There's some things you want to do for yourself. And you know what I want to do for myself all the time? Grill an incredible steak. You've heard Hugh talk about the good folks at besthotgrill.com, who also make best gas logs for your fireplace. If you're still burning wood or your old gas log is overdue for a makeover, Rasmussen Gas Logs has a new look for you. They have many finishes, including detailed bark, fresh split, weathered driftwood, white birch. For rooms with modern or contemporary design, don't use a rustic log set. Check out Rasmussen's famous fireballs to keep your fireplace's appearance in alignment with the room's decor. A fireplace is the focal point of every room. So you want a Rasmussen gas log set or fireballs. They look great when the fireplace is off and even better when it's on. Now, again, I love their grills, but you've got to get these gas logs, man. If you want to get a free personalized gas log set sizing recommendation and more information about U.S.-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills, go to besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com. American-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. It's not a ripoff. You know what a ripoff is? Everything that's going on in Minneapolis. It's insane. I don't even know where to begin with this because it's so outrageous. But you had Nick Shirley. He gets his little iPhone, and he goes out, and he does what most of the mainstream media won't. Now, again, I want to credit the New York Times for writing an article on it, and that's important. And I want to credit CNN for following up on Nick Shirley. But where's the reporting from everyone else? Where's the powerful visuals that make people say, holy cow, that draw 110 million views? They aren't getting them for you, folks. They're not going out and doing it. What do? You go down to the Leering Center. What's a Leering Center? Is that some place where, like, the Lincoln Project hangs out, scoping out the local young talent? No. The Leering Center should be Learning Center. They've just misspelled it. And that may be the most iconic of Nick Shirley's imagery. The Leering Center, which a couple $1,000,000, and there's no kids there, and there's nothing going on. It's just money being flushed down the toilet all the way back to Mogadishu because the money's going back home. And when the money goes back home, who gets a piece of it? The local terrorists. The local terrorists. They're literally funding local terrorists. But our boy Tim Walz, he's not happy about it. He says it's white supremacy to point out massive fraud. Good gravy. Did we dodge a bullet in 2024 or what? Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel. If you're watching, and you should be watching, because I'm looking good for a man of my age, which is 27. 27. Among other things, I am the author of the new book, Panama Red, and I want you guys to go get it. It is a great Kelly Turnbull adventure, inspired by Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart said, we got to make our own culture. We got to do our own pop culture stuff. If you're dissatisfied with what Hollywood and what the publishing industry are doing, go do something yourself. I did. I went out and wrote the first Kelly Turnbull book, People's Republic. This is the 9th, Panama Red. It is still selling like hotcakes. Andrew Breitbart also told us, go out and be a citizen journalist. Go out and tell the stories the regime media won't. But don't expect to not get pushback. And it's pushback of the most lame and tacky and stupid kind. Nick Shirley went out with his iPhone, documented the mass fraud among the Somali community in Minneapolis. And what was Governor Jazz Hands, Tim Walz, what was his response? It was exactly what you think it would be. Cut number 4.
This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy.
And, of course, Nick Shirley got on Fox and responded as follows. Cut 5.
Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
Yeah, Tim wants votes. There are entire apartment complexes where white people have been pushed out of these apartment complexes because Somalians have taken over and they're inside of these towns like Minneapolis where they can go get votes from these people. And if you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this stuff happen, and because you're going to call a white person racist for calling out facts, this is what's going to happen to a state like Minnesota. Minnesotans, they say Minnesota nice, but they are very upset. And I totally understand why they're upset, because they don't have a governor who's actually working for them. He's actually working against them.
I'm not morally offended at Tim Walz because I don't give Tim Walz enough credit to morally offend me. He has no morals. He is an abomination. He has taken a state that, while liberal, prided itself on being organized and peaceful and friendly and efficient and having good government, and it has none of those things. But it's people, it's liberal people in the cities, because it's close to being a purple state, but it's still a blue state. Its people have not stood up and said, I don't care if Governor Jazz Hands calls me racist. It's not okay to encourage and tolerate the mass looting of the public purse. That's not okay. I don't care who you are. And let's understand, this is the federal government's money, right? But it's the state that's doing the administration. I don't think the state is being incompetent. I think the state is purposely tolerating it. But you know who, of course, is really to blame? The guy who's really at fault is Donald Trump. Cut number 3.
Sure. So these were funds that were meant to go to help feed hungry people during the COVID pandemic, to help keep people in their homes who were at risk of homelessness. So first of all, if there is fraud there, that should be fully investigated, no matter where it is, whether it's in a Democratic-led state, a Republican-led state. I mean, let's pull back. So absolutely, it should be investigated. The question is, why is this a priority in a different kind of way? The politicization of the DOJ and the FBI is undeniable. So whether they are reliable narrators is the big question. And this is what happens when you weaponize and politicize federal agencies that are not meant to be, politicized. And I think the American people are right to ask the question, well, can we trust you? And that's a sad thing to say as an American. Let's recall, too, that there's also other scandals in other states. For example, the Mississippi welfare scandal. And this is not unique to politics. Americans know that. But, of course, the other factor here is that because it looks like the Somali population in Minnesota, the Somali immigrant population may have been involved in some way, those people are being scapegoated, and that community is being scapegoated in a way that certainly serves the far right.
Well, it's being scapegoated because it's committing the crime. But that's not me, Mara Gay, New York Times columnist. That's the New York Times. Now, the New York Times came out and reported on this 2 weeks ago. Here at Hugh Hewitt, we're objective. A lot of people have been saying, well, regime media is ignoring it. And most of it is. The New York Times did not ignore it. The New York Times ran stories on this, to its credit. Now, it did this because essentially it was, hey, if people see that these programs are totally corrupt and a giant boondoggle and a fraud, they're not going to support giving welfare to people as much as we'd like them to. So we should stop it for the sake of the welfare state. So motivations aside, it's interesting that Mara Gay of the New York Times seems really upset with the New York Times for bringing this out. And, of course, it's also the DOJ's fault because you can't trust the DOJ. Now, the DOJ's prosecuted some of these people. Prosecutions are continuing. But it's not the DOJ that was going out with its camera to all these fraudulent leering centers. It was a single reporter a real reporter, not a regime media reporter, and he was going out and he was documenting it. So I don't know why trusting the DOJ or not trusting the DOJ or Trump or any of the rest has anything to do with this. And I love how she concedes, well, if there was fraud, we should be upset about it and investigate it. But there's all this other fraud, so we have to ask ourselves, why do you care about this particular fraud? Well, in large part because 110 million people have looked at it on YouTube, and it is undeniable. And she's doing everything she can to deny it. Well, not exactly denying it. If you are a leftist, you're in a tough place right now because the utter corruption of your entire belief system is on full display thanks to Nick Shirley. There's a little Def Leppard in the house with Photograph. Holy cow, man, that takes me back. I was like in high school when that came out. Most of you people probably weren't even born. Anyway.
That was 30, 40 Democratic frauds ago.
Well, and I chose Photograph because I work with Adam to curate our musical cues here on the Hugh Hewitt Show when I guest host, because I don't think we would be having the same conversation about the mass fraud in Minneapolis that if it wasn't for Nick Shirley bringing out the photographic evidence.
110 million views for a 42-minute video. And it's not like it's not been reported before. It's been on local Minnesota television. They've done reports here and there, but nobody would listen. But it took Nick Shirley and YouTube, and it just caught wind. It just went viral.
Well, I think it's the power of the visual.
Yes.
Visual.
The Leering Center.
The Leering Center. I mean, that one image is iconic.
Yeah.
It is perfect. It sums it up so absolutely. And this isn't something new that just in the internet era, right? There are certain images that everyone recognizes, where it's raising a flag on Mount Suribachi,
right?
Or even the picture of the man standing up in Norman Rockwell's free speech picture. They evoke, and this is the kind of thing that Andrew Breitbart taught us, that we have to use this kind of imagery, this kind of way to spark the dialogue and send it in our own direction. And I think, the leftists used to be the masters of art. Remember? They would do.
Andrew taught us to use the left's tactics against them.
Exactly. Yes. And it's funny because Hollywood and the regime media have lost that. The last iconic image that the regime media brought out was Donald Trump after he was shot.
Right.
And that was it was a great photograph. Of course, it didn't get the Pulitzer Prize. Of course not. But it was Donald Trump who instinctively understood what America needed at that moment, even as he had just cheated death, even as he was bleeding, which says a lot about Donald Trump.
Now, you contrast that with how Tim Walz is reacting to a moment. Now, you would think that at some point he would want to stop the bleeding, but no, he just signed a bill to give workers, Somali workers, 20 weeks of paid time off. Guaranteed 20 weeks of
time off from what? They're all on welfare.
If they have a child. They don't have to prove they had a child, they just have to claim it.
Good gosh. One thing I love when I guest host for Hugh Hewitt is I get to bring on interesting people. And now I'm bringing you one of my favorites from this world because he's a really cool guy, loves Zankou chicken, and you can't doubt anybody who loves Zankou chicken. He's also always interesting. His name is Michael Malice. He's an author. His most recent book is The White Pill, A Tale of Good and Evil. And he is the host of the Your Welcome podcast, YOUR, a podcast that I play on repeat during my drives between Los Angeles and California with my lovely bride, who also adores Michael Malice. Michael, welcome to the show.
Well, Kurt, as a fellow author, you know the word interesting is always a euphemism for something bad.
Not me. I'm very linear.
Yeah.
I'm the most straight edge guy in the world. You, on the other hand, you are kind of you're not a conservative. You're not a right winger. You're just sort of an imp. You spread chaos and joy, and you identify as an anarchist. And I'm wondering, as an anarchist, are you strutting around like the cock of the walk, watching government humiliate itself?
No, because I would be if the government humiliation led more people to be skeptical of government. But I feel like we're taking a very dark turn in America, not to mention the rest of the world, where people are much more comfortable with totalitarianism and authoritarianism. So I think this idea a lot of us had during COVID that people are waking up. Well, there's a very low ceiling in how many people are going to wake up. And I'm seeing what's happening in Minnesota. I'm seeing what's happening in the UK. I'm not strutting around at all.
Well, I would think, and again, I'm a linear guy, I would think that watching the government demonstrate its absolute ineptitude, if not active malice, if you pardon the expression, by importing a bunch of third worlders who have no intention of assimilating into society, and I'm pro-immigrant. You are an immigrant, if I remember correctly. And then looting the public trough, I would think that people would look at that and go, maybe I ought to rethink some of my preconceived notions. Are you saying that they're digging in?
Yes, of course. Do you really think that if Tim Walz ran for re-election today, he wouldn't win? Keith Ellison is much worse than him. There were all those charges against him, not legal charges, but political claims against him by his ex-wife and so on and so forth. He got elected. So I don't think people, if you look at Gavin Newsom, he couldn't get recalled. He got reelected. He's got higher approval ratings. People don't learn. People are much more interested in narratives than in truth. And if they're being told the choice is between being like a white supremacist and evil, you want to kill grandma, and I'm a friendly neighbor, of course you're going to pick a friendly neighbor. So that's how the framing is being set forward. And of course they're doubling down. I don't see any evidence at all that Minnesota is becoming skeptical of immigration.
Let's cross the ocean for a second and look at Europe. You have the British people, the British government is arresting people for saying things. I literally went and defended Europe. I spent years there as a soldier, willing to die to stop the Soviet Union from overtaking these little democracies. And in Germany, you call a fat legislator fat, and the local Gestapo's going to start pounding on your door. What the hell do we make of that?
It's a lot easier now to speak German than English in Britain, isn't it? Because if you're saying the wrong thing in English, you're going to get arrested. But I think if you say it in German, you're going to get by. But the point is, the people want this. They're more than happy. There's not even protests in the very kind of innocuous way. Let's have a march, or let's form some groups. And the only thing they had was they were putting up the flags. How much, for people to realize, it was a form of protest in the UK to put up the British flag. Like, how far can a country have fallen where putting your flag on your own property is seen as an emblem of defiance? It's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around here in the US.
Well, as my mother, who was the daughter of a Scottish immigrant, said when she assessed Europe, all the good ones left. And I think a lot of them left, and I think a lot of them bled out on the Somme. And I think a lot of them bled out in World War II. And what you have left is a bunch of slackers who are living to earn their pension, maybe take a vacation to Ibiza once in a while, and then focus on the Eurovision Song Contest instead of, being real human beings.
I had Count Dankel on my show. He's a Scottish podcaster. And he was telling me that the Scots don't teach Scottish pride in their schools. And Scotland, which is a small area, and the amount of cultural impact the Scots have on the world is insanely disproportional. It's enormous.
Yes.
You would think, of all places, the Scots would be like, I'm proud of being Scottish, look, and here's the receipts. And they don't even have that. I can't wrap my head around it in the same way I was wondering how Canada, which is a very inhospitable environment, built for frontiersmen and people who could have survived rugged conditions have now become a nation of soy boy beta cucks. I don't know how this happened. Someone made the point that all the good ones were killed in the wars, like you just kind of alluded to. Maybe there's something to that, but I used to love Canada. The Canada of today is, to me, unrecognizable of the Canada of the 80s.
Yeah, the thing is, I do think there's room for hope. Donald Trump was reelected, and one of the things about Donald Trump is he kind of blew through all this nonsense. He is a flat-out, I love America, I love stuff about America, I want America big and bold and vulgar, and Americans should be big and bold and vulgar. And then you got outposts like Florida, where you got Ron DeSantis doing great things. Texas is coming along. Of course, I have a house out there now, and I know you're a resident, UD Camp, New York. Do you think there's hope?
Oh, I think there's a lot of hope, but I don't think America is anything analogous to Canada or the UK. And I think if you look what happened in Rotterdam with what was happening to young girls for a long period of time by hundreds of men, and with full knowledge of the authorities and the politicians, and no one's doing anything about it. There's no one is, taking what I would call direct action or things like that. It's, to me, unfathomable, because I think Americans, when they hear about, there's lots of lines we can cross, but when you're talking about things being done to kids, it's like, all right, time for conversation's over. Like it's time to raise that black flag. And they're not even that upset. When I can't empathize with someone's thought process, I don't know what to say, because it's effectively alien to my thinking.
You look at some of the things that they embrace. They tolerate the mass rape of children, which is what you're referring to in England.
Yes.
And it wasn't
Hold on. It's not just that word. It's torture as well. They were being violated with like baseball bats. They were beaten. They were drugged. It's even worse than what you just said, which is you would think is the worst thing.
And then the mutilation of children to conform to the delusions of their Munchausen mommies.
Right.
There are people who, and I want to keep it, I don't want to scandalize people, but we need to say what it is. Castrating perfectly healthy boys to make them into a simulacrum of a girl when they are obviously not. This is Caligula level. Actually, I want to give Caligula more credit. Caligula, who made his horse a consul and tried to marry his sister, would be repelled and disgusted and send these guys to the Colosseum to be consumed by lions if they propose this. When you're not meeting Caligula's standards, your civilization is problematic.
Well, my understanding is in the UK they've heavily pushed back on that, thanks to old school feminists and people like J.K. Rowling. So at least the kids in this one area are safe from those kind of surgeries and medications. But what's insane to me is, Kurt, you and I both saw on social media for several years, every conservative constantly 24/7 talking about this stuff with kids. And then Trump got elected and everyone just pretended it went away. It's still happening in many of these states. Newsom is still bragging about it in California. And I wish the conversation would go back to that. And
well, Michael, we've got to leave it there. But thank you for coming on. That's Michael Malice. Check out the You're Welcome podcast. It's great. I am a retired Army colonel. I am a senior columnist at Town Hall. I am the author of the latest Kelly Turnbull novel, Panama Red. You should go get it. People love Panama Red. And in it, the hero, Kelly Turnbull, who is a special operative from Red America, sneaks into Blue America. And he goes into the heart of Blue America to Mogadishu, which is the new name for Minneapolis. Now, of course, Panama Red was written before the latest revelations about the chaos in Mogadishu, Minnesota came out. But it is, it's on point. Let me just say it's on point, and you ought to check it out. I love this scandal. I wholeheartedly love it because it does a couple things that I think are very important. All right. First of all, it provides undeniable proof about things that we as conservatives have been saying about the welfare state and how it's a giant trough for waste, fraud, and abuse. When you start giving people free money, people start taking as much free money as they can. And you lose focus on the alleged purpose. The alleged purpose of this scandal was to allow people to be fed because COVID was on and they couldn't eat for some reason. Oh, I know the reason. Because they got locked inside their houses to avoid a cold. In any case, the real purpose, of course, of any social program is not to actually help people. That is a lie. That is a scam. That is an okey doke. The real purpose is to buy votes from people who want free money. Now, I will admit that I enjoy free money too. If you were to come and say, Kurt, would you like some free money? I would say yes. Now, if I had to, sacrifice my dignity or my integrity to get it, I would decline. I would not steal the money. I would not abuse a program to get the money, but I was not raised by wolves. I don't steal, and I don't rip off the government. But not everybody feels like that, especially people who weren't necessarily born into our culture. Okay? I did the 23andMe thing. I'm like 60% German, like 39% Scotch, and I got like 1% Balkans. Clearly, some Pannonian legionnaire went up to the Rhine and started scoring with the local Madchen, if you know what I'm saying. But I'm very linear, and the kind of Scandinavian, German, British. We have good, efficient, relatively uncorrupt government. I'm not going to pretend there's no corruption, but there is some. I remember when I was in Kosovo. I went to Kosovo after 9/11. Spent 2005 there working with the locals in civil affairs stuff, and I remember this was. I always hated the UN. I always knew it was a scandal, a scam, a ripoff. But, one of the highlights of my interaction with the UN was when we had to pick a border guard, right, to handle, like, border crossings and deal with smuggling. And the UN had a choice between a German and a Nigerian. Do you want to guess who they picked to control the smuggling post? Yes, the Nigerian. Of course it was the Nigerian. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a funny story. There are just some cultures that do not fit into the kind of culture that founded America. And, of course, Minnesota was founded primarily by Scandinavians and Germans who were very much a high-trust society. Generally, they weren't corrupt. Generally, they were efficient. Generally, they liked things nice and orderly and quiet. And that has changed. And if you think Minneapolis itself, now outside of Minneapolis is very different. And outside of Minneapolis is largely red. Minneapolis is very blue, and it is very corrupt. Ask Norm Coleman. Right? Or was it Tim Pawlenty or Norm Coleman who got ripped off? Try both.
No, Tim Pawlenty was governor. He was the last good governor the state had.
Yeah,
and Norm Coleman was the one who had the election kind of stolen.
Yeah, and then
out
Al
from
Franken won. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see my air quotes. The idea that Tim Walz didn't know about this is madness, much like selecting Tim Walz to be
It's like Hillary Clinton not knowing Bill Clinton fooled around.
I know. It's like a shock. I'm shocked. He's Claude Rains in Casablanca. I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in this establishment, Rick. Yeah, shocked. But he is good at the excuse. Let me hit clip number 4
This
for
is
Tim
what
Walz's
happens when
excuse.
they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy.
Okay. I don't want to be, that guy who's really strict about definitions, but a definition of white supremacy is not being against mass theft. Okay, and Dwayne, you and I were talking about this. One of the problems with the left is they take things that are bad and they put the label on things that are good, leaving people confused. For instance, I like honesty in government. And the left says, well, that's white supremacy. So I'm kind of left going, wait a minute, I don't like white supremacy, but I do like the thing you just called white supremacy. You're probably a lying scumbag.
Right. So,
and they make discussion impossible.
Right. You can't have a conversation anymore because nobody has a common sense, a common understanding of what words either mean or what they don't mean.
Well, they're like the Red Queen. Words mean exactly what I say, nothing more, nothing less. That, of course, is a song by The Replacements, the greatest band ever, Dwayne, and from Minneapolis, which has been a topic of discussion
and
today.
Not Somali.
And it is. They are not Somali. They are not a traditional Somali band. The Replacements with Left of the Dial, which I think is just maybe one of my favorite songs ever. It's just, it is, I just love that song. And I love the opportunity of coming here on the Hugh Hewitt Show and being able to choose my bumper music. I don't know why they let me, but they're crazy. Also, I love being able to tell you about Panama Red, my new Kelly Turnbull conservative action novel. It is still high on the charts. It's been out almost a month. You should go get Panama Red. It is a lot of fun. But you know, while you should do something for yourself, you should do something for others too. And that brings me to Angel Tree. It's a charity that I've donated to. I donated my pay for one of my guest host slots here at Hugh Hewitt this week. And, you know, I'm an Army officer. I never ask anybody to do anything that I won't do. But I am asking you to do this. Now, I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us on the Hugh Hewitt Show Angel Tree Christmas campaign through our friends at the nonprofit Prison Fellowship. And together, just on this show, we blessed over 4,000 boys and girls who had a mom or dad in prison with a very special Christmas morning. If you missed our show last Friday, the day after Christmas, we received this call from a woman named Kathy who knows very well the impact of folks like you have had from all over the country.
I myself was in prison for 4 years, and Angel Tree never failed. My kids got a gift from me every year, and I'm so thankful for that. Everybody that's donating, you're donating to a great cause. You really are, because these kids go through so much, which is nothing is their fault, but kids will think funny things sometimes. Oh, mom's in prison because we did something bad. It's a great organization, and I'm happy to put whatever extra money I might have into it.
And here's some really great news. Prison Fellowship's work doesn't stop at Christmas. It goes on year-round with things like Angel Tree Sports Camp, Angel Tree Summer Camp for Kids. So if you'd still like to help and score a year-end tax deduction, our website is hughhewitt.com, and when you click on the Angel Tree banner, your generous gift in any amount will carry on this great work. But remember, to get a 2025 tax deduction, you must make your donation before midnight on December 31st. And New Year's coming up. It's always a time of renewal. I always start wondering what's going to happen next year. And on Thursday at Town Hall, you can read my column, which are, evaluate my predictions for 2025. You'll appreciate the sports ball reference, Dwayne. I was batting 750. I got about 3/4 right by my own calculation last year. And I got some new ones for 2026. But I think overall in sum, it's going to be a good year, not least of all because of what's happening in Minnesota, because it's telling us the truth. It's illustrating the truth in an undeniable way about uncontrolled immigration from incompatible cultures. And what happens when we refuse to demand that newcomers to America assimilate. It is also telling us the undeniable truth about the welfare state, which is it's going to be used and abused because when you're giving free money for not working, no matter how you color it, how you shade it, how you try and define it, you're giving people free money. They're going to take more and more, and they're not going to be too picky about their eligibility. And it also tells you an undeniable truth about the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is a criminal organization. Now, it's not entirely criminal, but part of it is about ignoring and enabling this kind of graft. It's not a bug. It's a feature. You think, look, Tim Walz isn't going to be, confused with Niels Bohr anytime soon, okay? He's not Stephen Hawking, right? This guy isn't a genius. He still knew exactly what the hell was going on here. He knew it was a giant ripoff. He knew they were shoveling money to the Somali community because the Somali community was going to come down en masse to elect Democrats. He knew it. They all know it. And, of course, he deflected. Well, it's white supremacy to point out welfare fraud. Not buying it. 2026 is going to be the year that people wake up. And I don't think we've heard the last of this. I think we've heard the last of the Epstein idiocy. I don't think we're going to hear about Rob Reiner anymore. I don't think we're going to hear about any of the nonsense. This is going to be the year of, hey, our government's getting screwed over, meaning we're getting screwed over, and we're done taking it. I promised my next guest, Batya Ungar-Sargon, News Nation host and writer. You've seen her and heard her, and she's great. I promised her a terrific song to introduce her, and London Calling is not only one of my favorite tunes. It has to do with some of my questions. Batya, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great song.
See? Excellent. I love to be validated.
Promise is kept.
Well, look, and there's some method behind my madness here, Batya. You're prominently wearing a Star of David, but you would not be safe walking down the streets in London. You would not be safe necessarily walking down the streets in Sydney, and to America's shame, maybe not in the city of New York or other major cities. What is causing this disgraceful resurgence of the ancient prejudice of anti-Semitism around the world, or at least around the West?
Well, I do have to, I think, disagree a little bit. I live in New York. I walk around like this all the time. I always feel safe. I think it's a little bit of a smear on our homeland to suggest that we're in the same league as London or Europe or Australia. This country has always been very, very protective of Jews, and I believe it remains so. I think most of the online agita around my people is, manufactured by a few, very unimpressive accounts who have, it turns out, very international followings. So I really feel pretty strongly that America is still the homeland for the Jews who live here in a very strong way. Thank you for your service in protecting it and keeping it that way. And I do have to say, I feel smug about it. Like, I'm not just like, I believe this, but I also feel smug about it. Like, I look down on Europe for a lot of reasons, but this is top of the reasons.
Well, I look down on Europe too, because I spent 4 years over there in the military, and I appreciate you thanking me for my service. I was a colonel. I literally did nothing except drink coffee and run a heavily armed car wash. But it does make me happy, Batya, to hear you say that you don't feel especially threatened in the United States, because the impression I get watching the ugliness out on the streets, especially after October 7th, watching the ugliest among some who are allegedly on the right, and I'm not sure they're actually on the right, but I think they get lumped over with us because they're not on the left. Mm-hmm. I worry about my Jewish friends. I worry that somebody's going to try and hurt them, and I urge them to take advantage of our wonderful Second Amendment, which many of them have.
I mean, I so appreciate hearing that. It means a lot. Of course, there has been a resurgence of anti-Semitism among some of the influencers on the right. They make a lot of noise online, but I was very heartened by a recent finding. There was a poll that found that the majority of Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson's audience is still pro-Israel, meaning they're listening to them and it's like going in one ear and coming out the other. And that just put a big smile on my face, because that's my experience too. I think a lot of people who listen to this stuff, they listen to it because it's funny or amusing, or in Tucker's case, a legacy act, perhaps. It's something that they're used to listening to.
I think there's a lot of that.
That doesn't mean that they're sort of listening to it and agreeing with it or getting their opinions from it. I think that what happened was the media got woke and left. And so this very, robust right-wing online media sphere developed that didn't have the same sort of gatekeeping as the left-wing media. But I think that the consumers know that. I think that when they read something or they hear something that they see on the internet, I think most Americans don't think, oh, wow, that's true, that's terrible. I think most Americans think, oh, wow, I wonder if that is true, because they're using their brains, because this is the greatest country on earth and they have great brains. So I feel like things are pretty much okay. I mean, I don't want to talk about the left. That's obviously like a mess and a disaster. But I think by and large, the vast majority of Americans are still on our side.
Look, I had an article in Town Hall today which was titled, "Can You Feel the Vibe Shift?" And my contention is, in the last few weeks, despite a few unforced errors, things have started turning back around. About 6 months ago, things were going great with the Trump administration. Then it slowed down. I think it's inevitable that you have peaks and valleys. But I think they start picking up with the economic news. And I got to tell you, Batya, I'm looking forward to 2026. I think our country is going to come roaring back, especially with our 250th anniversary, with the economy kicking up, with the American military getting back to what it was. What do you think? Am I off base about the vibe shift?
Oh, no, I totally agree. And as one of the very few people who was defending the tariffs fulsomely from day one, I feel really smug. Like, I feel some type of way about the fact that people called me a moron and low IQ and whatever for a year. It turns out like, wow, look at this economy and it's only getting better and better. So not only do I feel happy and excited for the country, but I feel happy and excited for myself, because all my haters turned out to be wrong. And there are few feelings that are that good.
Well, look, I like lording it over people I've proven wrong. Occasionally that happens, not very often. I think the tariff thing's very interesting because I had some questions about it, but I realized, particularly since I went to the War College and we talk about different elements of national power, that tariffs weren't purely economic power. It was American power across the spectrum to reset our relationships with the rest of the world. And if you look what's happening to NATO, we're resetting the post-war relationships. And there's trouble. And back to London calling, in London and Berlin and even Paris, though the French are the French, I think a lot of these countries are a little stunned that the America is reevaluating its role, which is largely subsidizing them in treasure and blood, that it's had for the last 80 years.
Yeah, the Democrats are very, very worried that the rest of the world is not going to like us anymore. And it's so amazing to have an administration that's kind of like, yeah, that's the point. They were fleecing us and abusing us and taking advantage of us, and we were subsidizing all their crap, and we're not doing that anymore. We're subsidizing our crap now, It's so amazing. And, like, that would have been good enough, as the Jews say, like, Dayenu, that would have been enough. But, like, he did that, and then every single one of those world leaders that the Democrats were, like, on their knees begging for approval from came and bent the knee to Trump, right? Like, every single one of them came and begged him for crumbs. It couldn't have been better.
Well, look, if you've got power, you should use it. You should use it for good, which Donald Trump, I think, is doing. But you should use it. We're under no obligation to submit to our inferiors being everybody else. Panama Red, the new Kelly Turnbull novel. Go get it. Get Panama Red. It's amazing. Just ask me. You can trust me. I was a lawyer in California. Dwayne.
Yes.
You think there's any corruption in California?
I wrote a piece at Hot Air today, and my whole thing is, look, as a Californian, it's just grand to see all the stuff going on in Minnesota. It's quite impressive as far as scandals and corruption go.
I think they're pikers.
But yeah, as a Californian, it's like, hold my beer, right?
Hold my Chardonnay.
Hold my Chardonnay. There was Steve Hilton, the gubernatorial candidate here, and some others were saying, look, Newsom, just in the scam tram alone, plus the wildfires and relief effort, and it could be $70-80 billion worth of fraud that's happened here.
Oh, at least. By the way, how many houses have been rebuilt in Pacific Palisades? I know the answer.
The answer is 0.
No, it's 1.
Whose?
They got 1.
Who?
I don't know. But
why don't we know that?
They got 1. Because Nick Shirley is busy in Minneapolis.
You know where else he's going to have to go next is Washington State, because apparently this morning there are all sorts of Somali daycares all over Washington State that have applied for all the same bennies that happened in the Gopher State. And the problem is, on the applications, they don't even put addresses down for these places.
Well, of course not. Why should they? Because the purpose isn't to actually fund daycare. It's to give free money to constituents.
Yeah, I mean, you remember Hillary Clinton, it takes a village to raise a kid?
I do.
Well, we've now discovered it takes a Somali village, and you don't need the kids.
You know, and I think it's interesting because they're saying, well, you're racist because you hate Somalis. Well, Somali culture does this. And that's just a fact.
No, I just hate the fraud.
I hate the fraud.
I could do without the fraud.
I can do without the fraud, and I'm not going to be silenced because people who already hate me and anything they say about me is said in bad faith are going to say more mean things about me. Somalis in huge numbers come to America, and like 80 or 90% of them live off welfare, and these are Somali fraud gangs.
So what would President Kurt do at this point, knowing what we know now?
I would end the program completely. I would not allow any more immigration from Somalia. I would start denaturalizing people who fall within the denaturalization standards.
Would you start with Ilhan Omar?
If she married her brother and did immigration fraud, I'd throw her out. And people can scream and yell, but you either have laws or you don't. And the Democrats think we don't. I disagree. And one of my favorite things to do when I guest host for Hugh Hewitt is bring on interesting people with inside info. And no one's more interesting and inside than my next guest, who is the CEO of American Majority, my pal Ned Ryan with a U. Ned, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thanks, Kurt. Good to be with you.
Oh, by the way, you can see his book, American Leviathan, behind him. I strongly recommend you get that and read that. It is near my bed, too. A very select group of books. So, Ned, you talk to everybody. You know everybody. You're a mover and shaker in the deep, dark background. Tell me, what do you think is going to happen in 2026?
Many wonderful and interesting things, Kurt. No, I think 2026 is going to be, especially about the midterms, it's going to be about three different things, I think, in my mind, at least three. Affordability in healthcare, and I've told POTUS this, we're not going to win on running against socialism or on foreign policy, even though I really like what he's doing on the foreign policy front and love the resurrection of the Monroe Doctrine. It's going to be about affordability in healthcare. How are we going to make the lives of the American people better? Are we going to make their lives better on the grocery front, on gas front, all of these things, so they'll be able to feel it in their pockets by the summer. And I like the trends, Kurt, on this front. I like where we're headed. Obviously, they just upgraded the third quarter of this year up to 4.3%. I think the fourth quarter is going to probably be in that same neighborhood. And I think we're going to have some really strong quarters in the first and second of 2026. I encourage him to keep on, producing domestic oil. He's already increased our domestic production by about 1 million barrels a day since he came into office. Drives down cost of products, groceries, all of these things. The other thing, too, that is going to be critical for us in 26 is Trump actually playing a real role in getting his voters out. Kurt, I think there's a dynamic that people need to be aware of if you've been paying attention. We don't live in 2004, 2008, in which Republicans hope for low turnout and able to win elections. In the Trump era, it has to be high turnout elections for Republicans to win, and the man that can bring them out is Donald Trump. He is, of course, not on the ballot, but his agenda and his policies are. And he's already committed to obviously doing a series of rallies. I hope that he'll probably spend $300 to $400 million from MAGA Inc. I think he's going to have to make that kind of investment. So Trump's going to have to play a significant role in the midterms to bring his people to the polls to vote for Republicans, to make sure that his agenda continues down the right path. And the last thing I'll say is this. I think Republicans are going to have to commit to, like we did in 24, into increasing the absentee ballot universe in key congressional districts. We have to run up the numbers on voter registration. I think we've got a golden opportunity in a lot of different battleground states where they're overlapping with key House districts in 26 that'll pay off in 28. So, if you were to ask me right now, if the midterms were in January, I think we lose. but they're in November of next year, and I like the trends, and I think we're going to be a pretty good spot. The last thing I'll say is this, the fourth one, I missed one. I think we're going to win the redistricting battles by 12, 13 seats, and I think people need to be watching in January to see what SCOTUS does with Louisiana versus Calais decision. If they make it early enough in January, that could be 6+ seats in addition to the ones we win in redistricting. So I'm kind of bullish with the midterms in November. Thank God they're in November and not in January.
Well, that's a lot to address. But let's stick with the last point, redistricting. We saw what happened in Indiana. What the hell was that? And how can we put some vitamin T for testosterone into some of these Republican eunuchs?
It's shameful what happened in Indiana. I really view them as traitors to the party. Quite frankly, Kurt, if I was to continue down that path, traitors to the Republic, because they don't seem to understand what time it is. We're not dealing with your granddaddy's Democratic Party. We're dealing with a Marxist left, in which I've said this many times. I'll say it again. The way that this ends, Kurt, is we either submit to them or they submit to us. We rule them or they rule us. That's the only way this ends with the Marxist left. And for Republicans, the state senators in Indiana, to fail like they did is shameful. I hope every last one of them gets a primary challenge. I hope that they're actually all run out of office. I think Cam Savage, the consultant that was behind it, I hope that he is blacklisted in Republican circles. And even more so, I'm pretty sure that Todd Young, Republican senator out of Indiana, also his fingerprints are somewhere in this whole mess in Indiana. I hope he gets a primary challenge in 2028 and Trump endorses that primary challenger.
Well, look, I think it's important that if somebody crosses you, you knock them on their fourth point of contact. I mean, Ned, do you agree with me that one of the main problems with the Republican Party now is so many of these politicians, consultants, hangers-on somehow managed to grow up never getting in a fist fight?
I will say this, the thing that I've noticed being in D.C. for the last, man, it's crazy to say this, 25 years, Republicans, inability to fight. I came when I was 10 years old, just so we're clear. I'm still very young, Kurt. Inability to fight, and they don't know what to do with political power when it's given to them. And this is the one thing where Donald Trump is such a refreshing figure in Republican politics, because when he gets political power, he intends to use that political power, because that's why the American people gave him political power, is to actually use it. And too many Republicans in D.C. want to trim around the edges. They want to be in charge and have cool careers. Donald Trump really, I do believe, wants to bring fundamental change to D.C. and wants to restore representative governments. And that's one of the reasons a lot of establishment Republicans hate him. First of all, he shames them. And two, they're not really interested in us restoring representative government. They're pretty happy with the way things are right now.
Well, look, I think afflicting the comfortable is something that we as Republican activists should do.
Right.
Let's look ahead to 2028, because I want to pick your brain. It looks like a clear runway for J.D. Vance, but as I'm going to write in Town Hall soon, I love J.D. Vance, which is why I want him to be in a hardcore primary fight.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think right now he's in the driver's seat. I think that's pretty obvious. I think the midterms are going to be a big test for him as well, though. I mean, he's the RNC finance chair. So is he going to be successful in raising the funds necessary for us to hold on to the House? Pretty confident about the Senate. If we lose the Senate, the House is going to be a total disaster. But, is JD going to be successful as the RNC finance chair? If he is, I think that really does set him up to be the front runner for the 2028 nomination. Again, let's also be honest about this, Kurt. It's also the Trump sweepstakes. Whoever Trump endorses, I think the clear-cut favorite to be the nominee. But, you're right. I love JD. I think JD's got a great team around him. I wouldn't mind a little bit of a primary challenge just to kick the tires and refine their campaign going into a general. I have seen, just being in Virginia, let me make a quick point here about Virginia. The gubernatorial campaign, there was a complete and total disaster here in which Winsome Sears got obliterated, took down all the other statewide and the House of Delegates. We lost, whatever we're at. We almost have a supermajority now with Democrats. She should have had a primary challenge, and Youngkin went out of his way to endorse her early on to prevent a primary. A primary would have benefited us here in Virginia, kicked the tires on Winsome Sears' campaign, which was miserable, or gotten us a stronger candidate. So I'm generally of the opinion you should have a primary of some sort just to refine the campaign, kick the tires, get everybody clicking on all cylinders. But that'll say I think JD is the odds-on favorite to be the 2028 nominee, and I'm actually quite happy with that.
Outstanding. Look, you hear gossip, you hear rumors. You think we're going to see a Supreme Court justice or two retire next summer?
Maybe. The rumors are not really floating around that much about retirements on the Supreme Court. I'm haven't heard anything that's kind of gone to the top of my radar on that front. But I would love it if Trump got one or two more picks to make sure that we have the Supreme Court for a very long time. This is the one thing, Kurt, that I think will be one of Trump's greatest triumphs. When it's all said and done, the Supreme Court that he has restructured and I hope continues to restructure will exist long after he is gone. And it has provided us a massive backstop to the left. And it has also provided us the ability to, I think, really start to deconstruct the administrative state, in which you've seen some pretty important decisions in the last year or two, with Trump's Supreme Court starting to really kick at the foundations of the state. And I think that's a fantastic thing.
Well, Happy New Year, Ned Ryan, CEO of American Majority. That's Kansas with Carry On My Wayward Son. The perfect intro song for my friend Carrie Pickett of the Washington Times. She's the White House correspondent. Hi, Carrie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Kurt.
Well, look, big story out there, Somali corruption, and it's spreading all over the country. You're at the White House. How's President Trump and his administration going to deal with this?
Well, Kurt, the interesting thing here is that they have several avenues to really hit at this. The first avenue is the political aspect of it, where they can go through the House Oversight Committee, where you have Chairman James Comer, who is investigating it, and they can figure that they can start looking towards it and start looking at the governor of Minnesota, as well as other high-ranking officials. And ultimately, if they find any sort of criminal wrongdoing, ultimately they can start looking towards criminal referrals towards the Justice Department. On the legal aspect of it, which is where you have a lot of interest in, you already have Kash Patel, and you also have the Justice Department as well, who are looking to charge several individuals. And there have been several individuals who already have been charged, and see how many within the Somali community who could ultimately go to a prison on this. And you also have the Homeland Security Department, and whether or not you'll see how many Somali individuals who could possibly be deported on this. So it's a whole smorgasbord of the administration who could have their hands in this, Kurt.
Well, Carrie Pickett, I obviously have to do a legal investigation, but if you throw this over to the House and put in another thing on their plate, it kind of smacks of we're going to form a blue ribbon commission. If there's anything I have ever heard that requires a Truth Social post from Donald Trump, it is Nick Shirley's 110 million viewed video, where Trump ought to retweet that and say, hey, look at what's going on. Look at what Tim Walz did. Look at the guy that Kamala Harris picked as her VP nominee. I think this is a political hammer, and I think they ought to start swinging it.
But think about this, Kurt. This didn't just open things up in Minnesota. It also opened things up in Maine, for example, or any other state that also took in many individuals within the Somali community who came in here under pretty suspicious means. And it's not just the Somali community, it's also other countries that came in very similar circumstances many years ago, and then took advantage of the particular very generous welfare state within the United States. And look, you have Minnesota, which has a very Scandinavian welfare system that was taken advantage of to the nth degree. And then unfortunately, now here we have Governor Walz, who said, oh, well, now I have a reform program that's going to fix all the fraud system. Well, now you're just saying this after the fact, when you essentially got caught, because previously there were whistleblowers who are apparently threatened if they even stepped forward with this information, Kurt.
Well, Carrie, I just think it's a missed opportunity if Trump doesn't make this a personal political issue, because it cuts at the Democrat assumptions of immigration, and it cuts at the Democrat assumptions of the welfare state. It's a win-win. You can be ridiculous like Tim Walz and stand and go, well, it's white supremacy to look at Somali daycare fraud. Normal people, even normal Democrats, are going to look at it and go, I didn't sign in for a bunch of guys fresh off the boat from Mogadishu ripping us off to the tune of $8 billion. I didn't do that. I think it's a very powerful opportunity, and I would like to see Donald Trump not miss it.
That's actually a very good point there, because for many, many years, you had people who did not want to talk about this because they were scared that they were going to be called a racist. But I think we have stepped way beyond that now, Kurt, because you have many people who are sick and tired of getting ripped off. Donald Trump sort of put that confidence behind them. And now where they've seen, like, think about this for a second. You have the Somalian GDP, which is about $12 billion. And at this point, they know that at least $9 billion has been defrauded off the federal taxpayer. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. And once people are told that, that's something where people, if they're told, well, you're racist for even talking about this. Like, no. You're a thief for even taking our money. So come on now, please.
Oh, Carrie Pickett from the Washington Times, you recently had a article on how the Trump White House and its press team were going to confront the regime media. Can you tell us about that big scoop? Because I thought it was fascinating.
Yes, this is very interesting because you have, if you recall, when President Trump first came to office in 2017, he thought that perhaps because he has been in the media going back to the 1970s, he always had a very friendly sort of relationship, and he thought that perhaps that would continue. Even though they were sort of surprised that when he went to the White House, it was a very hostile media. I spoke with Sean Spicer, his first White House press secretary, as well as Caroline Leavitt, his present press secretary. And Sean Spicer was like, we were shocked as to how hostile they were. And we were told that we had to conform to the traditional way that White House press secretaries always did things. And at first we did, but then we sort of changed things up. But by the time they changed things up, it was already sort of too late because they were always on defense. By the time you had Caroline Leavitt come in this time around, it was like, no, now we're going to have things done our way. We're going to have more conservative media in there to make sure that we are covered more fairly. They ended up bringing back more media passes, which is about, as hard passes, about 500 media passes were brought back. You see more conservative media in there. They actually tracked down reporters on online, social media such as X and Facebook, et cetera, and they tracked them down saying, you were wrong here. How dare you do this? They are much more aggressive. And you see that in the briefing room. You see that on X. You see Caroline Leavitt really following in the footsteps of her predecessor, Kayleigh McEnany, making sure that she calls out reporters who they feel are covering them incorrectly.
Do you see any improvement by the mainstream regime media towards fair coverage of the Trump administration 2.0, or are they continuing down the path that got them to this place in the first place? You got about 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Because certain reporters are no longer there anymore, it seems like they are treading a little more carefully, especially because the AP no longer has their special access where they're able to be there all the time in a lot of the pool of events anymore. They're no longer trying to get their way with the Trump, shall we say, comms people. Let's just say they are treating them a little more fairly, but still at the same time they're also trying to sneak around them a little more often. So let's just say it's just a different media.
Well, Carrie Pickett of the Washington Times, the White House correspondent, thank you for joining me on the Hugh Hewitt Show with a little AC/DC, because my bumper music is my art, and I curate the heck out of it. You know what else I do? This time of year, I try and help out. I try and help out because I've had a good year, and if you've done okay, think about the people who haven't. And I was an Army officer. I like to lead by example. I took the money that I get for one of these sessions of substituting for Hugh Hewitt, and I sent it off to Angel Tree. Now, I want to thank you and everyone who joined our Hugh Hewitt Show Angel Tree Christmas campaign that comes through our friends at the nonprofit Prison Fellowship. Just this year, this one show, Hugh Hewitt, blessed over 4,000 boys and girls who had a mom or dad in prison with a very special Christmas morning. If you missed our show recently, we received this call from a woman named Kathy who knows very well the impact folks like you from all over the country had on young people.
I myself was in prison for 4 years, and Angel Tree never failed. My kids got a gift from me every year, and I'm so thankful for that. Everybody that's donating, you're donating to a great cause. You really are, because these kids go through so much, which is nothing is their fault, but kids will think funny things sometimes. Oh, mom's in prison because we did something bad. It's a great organization, and I'm happy to put whatever extra money I might have into it.
Here's the really great news. Prison Fellowship's work doesn't stop at Christmas. It goes on year-round with things like Angel Tree Sports Camp and Angel Tree Summer Camps for kids. If you want to help, you can still get a giant year-end tax deduction. Just go to our website, hughhewitt.com, and when you click on the Angel Tree banner, it's right there at the top, your generous gift in any amount will carry out this great work. But remember, to get that 2025 tax deduction, you have to make your donation before midnight on December 31st. Angel Tree, I did it. What's your excuse? Okay. We've talked a lot about Somalia today, but let's see what else is going on. What else is in the news? Well, Donald Trump met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu down at Mar-a-Lago, and he had this to say. Cut number 9.
Mr. President, Yaron Avraham from Channel 12 News. What are your plans regarding Gaza for the next few weeks?
Well, we're going to be dealing on Gaza. That's why this very great prime minister is here right now. We're talking about Gaza. We're talking about a lot of things. We have about 5 major subjects that we're discussing, and Gaza will be one of those subjects.
Oh, he talked about some more stuff, too, like Maduro. Cut number 8.
Mr. President, have you or anyone in your administration talked to Maduro in recent days?
Well, I spoke to him.
Recently?
Pretty recent. Reasonably, but nothing much comes of it, yeah.
Mr. President, can you explain the importance?
You have to understand what he's done. They've sent billions of dollars of drugs in. But maybe just as bad, they've sent hundreds of thousands of people in from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions and insane asylums. The drug lords, the drug dealers were all sent into our country. But think of it, what he's done. Tren de Aragua, probably the worst gang. They cut off people's fingers. One man made a phone call to complain about them. He cut off their hand. They cut off his hand. Don't ever make a phone call again. We'll cut off your other hand. After that, we'll kill you, they said. That was in Colorado. No, they sent in all of the bad ones. They sent in some bad people. And that to me was just terrible. And they send in drugs. Now, I will say this. 97% of the drugs coming in by sea stopped. We're trying to figure out who the other 3% are. They have a hard time getting people to pilot those boats. But 97% of the drugs coming in by the ocean, by the sea, by water, are gone. Every boat that we take out, we save 25,000 lives of Americans.
Well, look, I don't know if it's 25,000 a boat, but it's 25,000 a year die from cocaine. Okay? And you always say, well, isn't it fentanyl coming from Venezuela? Oh, you're an expert on cartels, right? But let's assume you're correct. If it's all cocaine, 25,000 Americans still die from cocaine. I'm pretty happy with blowing up the drug boats. In fact, I'm celebrating. I'm doing a little dance because I'm so happy about blowing up the drug boats. Because I don't like Americans getting killed. If somebody's got to get killed, I propose it be the bad guys. Yeah, let's do that. Let's have them get killed. Not normal Americans. Not our sons and daughters. The bad guys. Another option, you cannot sell drugs. You cannot traffic drugs, and then you don't have to worry about getting blowed up. Your choice, your move. And of course, that bumper music is Social Distortion with its cover of Under My Thumb. And I chose that not because of any particular reason, just because it freaking rocks. And speaking of freaking rocking, my pal Josh Hammer is here. He's an author. He's a podcaster. He's senior counsel over at the Article 3 Project. He's also the author of Israel and Civilization, which you can see behind him. Hi, Josh.
Kurt, my good friend, belated Merry Christmas to you and a very early Happy New Year. Great to see you as always.
Well, thank you. I would wish you righteous Kwanzaa, except it's a stupid made-up communist joke, and I won't insult you even ironically by doing so. That book behind you, Israel and Civilization, I think it's very germane to what we're talking about here today, which is primarily the Somali diaspora and it seems to be its endemic crime and a massive fraud. And, you know, when Jewish people immigrated to America from around the globe, they were able to, I mean, there were Jewish criminals, I mean, Meyer Lansky, but they were able to integrate with our society fairly rapidly because, you know, it's a Judeo-Christian country. We have some in common. My argument is we don't really have a lot in common with Somali culture, which is pretty much summed up by the movie Black Hawk Down. And we shouldn't be surprised that when we introduce an alien culture, it acts alien.
You know, Kurt, you mentioned Jewish immigrants. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually. So I'm a fourth or fifth generation American, depending on which side of the family. But I think a lot about my mother's father, who himself was an immigrant, kind of that classic Jewish New York City immigrant, Lower East Side tenements kind of story. And he grew up very poor, as essentially pretty much all Jewish immigrants of that Ellis Island immigration wave did. And he had a slogan that he developed as he was learning English, and he lived his whole life by the slogan. And he said, if you can conceive it and you can believe it, then you can achieve it. And he very much lived the quintessential American dream. He built his own real estate business. He ended up, unfortunately, after he built his small fortune, he unfortunately had a bit of a gambling problem, ended up losing a lot of the money. We'll ignore those details for now. But the point is that there were many generations of immigrants who really did truly assimilate into American culture. And Somali culture, it's not just you, Kurt. I mean, I think most Americans who are paying attention, you don't have to be a sociologist or rocket scientist to notice, this stuff is incompatible. You know, our late beloved friend Charlie Kirk spent large swaths of the last year of his life arguing that Islam categorically is not particularly compatible with Western civilization, with American republicanism, American constitutionalism. That's not to say that there are not individual Muslims who can happily assimilate. Of course, there are many examples. Our old pal, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, there are plenty of examples there. But speaking here about categories, you know, you and I are both lawyers. We think of the categorical and the individual. At a categorical level, Islam, not just Islamism, but Islam itself, I mean, basically sheer percentages of Muslims throughout the world who are doing very different things in the name of Islam, are they defrauding others in the name of Islam? I don't really know, Kurt, but what I know is that it's not acceptable. It's a massive scandal. We're talking here billions of dollars, the largest defrauding, the largest bilking of the American taxpayer in the history of the United States. I personally want to see people go to jail. I want to see prosecutions. I want to see not just random Somalis who are operating these fraudulent child care centers. I would like to know what Tim Walz and Keith Ellison knew and when did they know it. By the way, what did Kamala Harris's vetting team know, Kurt, and when did they know it? They plucked Tim Walz out of relative obscurity, put him on the running mate there on the ticket. Are you kidding me? Either on the one hand, they were grossly incompetent, or on the other hand, they saw this, they said, no big deal, don't worry about it. We're going to beat Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I mean, have you seen a crazier thing, Kurt? It's absolutely insane, and it really ought to make Americans fundamentally ask these questions that you were properly asking, which is cultural and civilizational compatibility.
Well, look, I mean, you know, Kamala Harris could have made the smart choice. I was saying, gosh, I sure hope she doesn't pick Josh Shapiro. But, of course, she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, and I can think of two reasons why. A, he outshines her. B, he's Jewish. And that's poison in the Democrat Party.
Yeah, Josh Shapiro would have been the obvious pick. I mean, Pennsylvania.
Obvious. I was stunned.
For sure. No, Pennsylvania is the most important, by any stretch of imagination, of all the swing states. Josh Shapiro has very positive favorability ratings there. By the way, Kirk, I mean, come 2020, if Democrats sober up a little, I think that Shapiro probably is their most formidable candidate, honestly. I mean, I'm not sure who else would be. It's not Kamala Harris, that's for sure.
I think you're right. I just think he's going to have trouble winning a primary because while the Republican Party has had issues with anti-Semites who many of them don't identify as Republicans, but they're kind of lumped with the right because they're not active leftists. This is part and parcel of the Democrat Party. This is, we don't have a Michigan problem. The Somali votes in Minnesota. It is a real problem for the Democrats. And I think, as much as I like to be able to take advantage of the folly of my enemies, I think it's bad for America.
Oh, it's absolutely terrible for America. It's absolutely horrific, Kurt. This country was built as a Christian country. I say that as an Orthodox Jew, but it was built, Kurt, on a certain type of Christianity. The Christianity of the American founders was a very Hebrew Bible, Old Testament-based Christianity. I mean, that's why Leviticus is inscribed on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. That's why Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson wanted the national seal of the United States to be Moses parting the Red Sea. They viewed themselves as modern Israelites fleeing their version of oppression back in Egypt there. So this is part of our story. When you import cultures, in this case Somalis, who simply just do not understand this, on the contrary, frankly, they want to immunize and expedite the exact opposite of that culture, a Sharia supremacist takeover, at least in certain individuals in their own minds there. That is a recipe for disaster, and only a culture, only a civilization that appreciates what it was built upon, Kurt, only that culture and civilization has a chance at survival. So Trump has started this whole conversation when it comes to who's an American, was an American, ICE, the deportations. Frankly, Kurt, if I'm being even a little over the top there, I want to see some more denaturalization proceedings there. If you defrauded our immigration services and lied about your support for a foreign terrorist organization on your naturalization paperwork there, to me, that's fair game as well.
Well, Josh Hammer, I think Donald Trump has opened the Overton window, and I hope he throws a lot of these bums out of our country. Thank you for joining us, Josh Shapiro of the Article 3 Project. Thanks to Harley and Adam and Dwayne. Always make it a pleasure to join them here in the, Relief Factor studio.
That would be the one.
All right. Dwayne, you've got another beef, and I think we're going to talk about it more tomorrow, but I think we ought to at least address it today.
Well, we're
the
hearing...
elephant in the room.
Yeah, the elephant in the room here in California is apparently there's this billionaire tax that we're going to charge, 5% of billionaires, just a one-time...
But that's net worth. That is not, including unrealized gains.
It's not income tax. It's basically saying we want 5% of everything that you have made ever, and we're just going to take it.
Because we can, because you're billionaires.
And Peter Thiel has announced, okay, I guess I'm adiosing to California and moving out. Ro Khanna, who represents like $18 trillion in his district in Silicon Valley, and he's like, well, we got billionaires to spare, but they keep announcing they're going to move. And he's like, well, okay, fine. We'll just replace you with other billionaires.
Oh, okay.
Who?
Go to the billionaire store?
Yeah, they grow on billionaire trees?
They seem pricey. I expect they're probably expensive.
So at some point, California is going to drive all the money out of this state entirely.
I have no intention of paying any percentage of what I already own to the government. Or property taxes
or
already
what you might
obnoxious.
make if you liquidated.
Yeah, if I liquidated. And when exactly would that, what's the date of the liquidation? And then what happens if a week later, my 401ks crash? So now I don't owe 5%. I actually owe like 10%.
So look, I mean, we've been talking all day about Minnesota's fraud, and there's evidence that there's same kind of thing going on in Washington State, and we heard other states as well. California's got fraud coming out the wazoo. But what's the underlying denominator of all these states where all this fraud is taking place? New York State's got plenty of fraud. What's the common denominator here?
Good gosh. Let me see. What party runs those states?
Exactly. So you've got a midterm election coming up. Despite all the redistricting and all the other stuff that's going to be going on, do you really want to trust the country to people that are the ones that are perpetuating fraud everywhere?
I don't. I hope America thinks the same in 2026. I hope. But I'm actually pretty sanguine about how we're going to do in 2026. I
think we are too.
I think
the economy is coming. I mean, it's
coming.
By the time we get to the summer, and everybody's going to say, "Well, you know what? I didn't have to pay that much in taxes this year."
It's going to be cooking.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. I'm Kurt Schlichter, guest host. I will be back tomorrow and New Year's Eve, unless somebody comes to their senses.